Yannick Roy is the founder and CEO of NeuroTechX. He got his bachelor's degree in computer science and his PhD in psychophysics from the University of Montreal. In my discussion with Yannick, we go over what neurotechnology is from a high level, what its future will mean to humanity, as well as how future neurotech devices will look like. In addition, we go over current technological innovations such as artificial intelligence and deep learning and how it's affecting BCI technology development, both from an invasive and non-invasive standpoint. To whoever is listening, thank you so much, and I hope you guys enjoy and learn some interesting things from the interview. Hi Yannick, thanks for making this interview possible. To start out, for those who may not know what neurotechnology is, can you give a brief background of what neurotechnology is, how it originated, and where it's at right now?
Yes, that's a very broad question. So neurotechnology, and at least the way I see it and the way we kind of like put the framework around NeuroTechX is neuro, so anything related to brain and nervous system at all, and technology being any sort of tech. So that means that it's really broad. It can be from an application on your cell phone for Alzheimer or other thing, just monitoring your different state of mind, things like that, up to neurotechnology as most people see it being kind of like big machines in hospital, like brain scans, fMRI, and these kind of things. So I see it as any kind of technology that can interact with the brain as being under the umbrella of neurotechnology. As for the history of neurotechnology, well, it started, since forever, we've been interested in understanding the brain and trying to better understand it, read it through different means. But I think that only very recently we started having the technology and the tools to making a good experiments, I would say. Because back in the days, we didn't have many tools to look at the brain in a good resolution. So we could guess things and we could do behavioral experiments and things like that to see if you do X and we observe Y and we do it across a population, and then we see kind of like patterns and things like that. So we can infer things from the brain. But to really look at the brain, we didn't have any tools to look at it. Like we can open a skull and look at the brain, but if we just look at it, we don't see much, and we don't really have a full story. And especially if we open a skull and we have the brain, means that the person is not alive. So the amount of information we can actually infer from that is close to none outside of the anatomy of the brain itself. But when we talk about functional brain activity and really kind of like what makes the brain, I think that only recently, even if things like electroencephalography, EEG, started in like 1930s. It's been around for almost a century now. I think that only recently with computational neuroscience, fMRI, PET, and other imaging techniques, only recently do we understand a bit more the brain. And still, we might actually have another wave of innovation that will undo a lot of neuroscience that we've done in the past. So if you look at different sources, many say that what we've accomplished and discovered about the brain in the last 15, 20 years is more than the whole history of the human being. I believe that to be true. I think that in the past only 20 years, we've made a lot of progress in understanding the brain at various levels. And I think that in the next 20 years, we'll do definitely more progress in the past 20. So we'll definitely double kind of like the knowledge. And we're a little bit in an exponential learning curve about the brain. So I believe that in the next probably maybe 15 years, we'll know more than the past 20 that was more than the whole history. So I think that we're really in an accelerated learning. I don't think we have the resolution just yet. Well, I know we don't really have the resolution just yet to really fully understand the brain when we take things like fMRI, EEG, PET, whatever tools that we use to look at the brain, even with brain stimulation devices. We're not at the resolution of the brain, so we can only do experiment with just a rough understanding and rough tools. So we can infer and try to repeat test, but I think that the next wave of innovation will bring that resolution to a more interesting factor at which we'll start to really understand the brain. But we still have another wave or two of innovation before we really have exciting tools to probe the brain.
Yeah, most definitely. Considering the trending excitement of neurotechnology that you just mentioned, I would like to bring up the whole concept and idea behind the Gartner hype circle, just like you mentioned in your article 3 years ago. So essentially, when a new idea or innovation is introduced in the tech industry, there's usually this trigger of excitement to everyone. And then over time, that trend eventually falls downwards as expectations aren't met for that particular innovation or idea. So after that, after further engineering has been done, we experience this plateau of productivity in which that particular idea or innovation starts to affect the entire world. So in your opinion, what stage of the Gartner hype circle is neurotechnology currently in? Is it in the plateau of productivity?
We haven't reached, I think, the peak of excitement just yet,
All right.
to some extent, because I think that um, neurotechnology really accelerated. Well, really accelerated. If you look at things, I think that we can pinpoint in time a couple of key things that happened, key um, dates, and I think that the Brain Initiative and 2013 is one of them, where a lot of the brain initiatives, and not just the one in the US, but the Human Brain Project in Europe and others that followed in different countries after in 2014, 15, 16, and the 5, 6, 7 years after 2013 up to recently, a lot of the countries have started to invest massively in big brain projects.
Mhm.
And I think that we're just starting to see the some of the results of these investments. And now we're starting to be excited with some of these. I'm talking about the invasive stuff, brain stimulation devices. We've had a lot of announcement recently from like Facebook, Elon Musk, Colonel Marilu Jemison with open water. So I think that we start to be excited a few years ago, but I think that since 2013 we've started to be really, really excited, and I think we're
Mhm.
about to reach kind of like the excitement of all these big news need to start delivering actual concrete proof, and not just, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but then what in a few years from now?
Yeah.
So I think that we're slowly reaching the peak with all these big announcements from the R&D, military projects like DARPA funding a lot of the research, trying to push that out to market, or slowly. Obviously, it's not a 1 year, 2 years process. It takes a lot of time when we talk about neurotech. And all the Facebooks and all the announcements. We've had a lot of the Kickstarter, as I mentioned in my thing, like the consumer facing. So these are interesting and important tools, but in the macro picture, I think that, yeah, we're just reaching the peak of being excited. The next 10, 15 years are going to be very interesting in, okay, now we've pushed cognitive training a little bit, but it's controversial. We're not sure how to. We see that there is value in cognitive training, but we don't master it. Same thing with brain stimulation. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we know that there's something there. With invasive technology, we've made progress trying to image the brain with light and sound. We've made a lot of progress. EEG has made a lot of progress, but still has more leeway and more ways to try to explore it. FNIRS devices. So I think that we do have a lot of tools to which we're going to work with for the next 10, 15 years. And I think that then we're going to reach very exciting technology. This is why I personally wanted to spend my career in that field, knowing that we're super early. But people in the field of neurotechnology need to be honest with themselves that it's not a like if you go like an app, if you're creating app on your cell phone where it can go really fast, you can make innovation and go and it happens really fast. When you talk about brain technology, the cycle for innovation is not as fast. And we know so little, and it's so important to be right with what we develop because we're talking about the brain, we're talking about cognitive function. Sometimes we're talking about disabled people, vulnerable people. So we need to be right and not oversell what we can do. So I think that, yeah, the next 10, 15 years, I believe personally that we just kind of like started putting the foundation for what's to come. And this is why I'm personally super excited to be in the field with the age I'm at, because I think I'm gonna see very exciting discovery within
Exactly.
my lifetime and my career in the field.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's a great way to put it. Considering the growth of technologies we have today, such as deep learning and artificial intelligence, I think we as humanity are also able to see what potential we have. And I think because of that, it's also very reasonable to say that we are now reaching the peak of excitement, just like you stated. In addition, I would also like to ask you about yourself and how you personally got into neurotechnology and how you ended up founding NeuroTechX. In addition, what are some projects that NeuroTechX is working on right now?
Yeah, I got excited with neurotechnology. Well, with the brain, I've always been fascinated by the brain since I was a kid, trying to understand why I was different. And I think that we all ask ourselves that question, kind of like, I'll see other people around ourselves and compare ourselves. And sometimes some things are similar, but sometimes they are really different with different people. And you ask yourself, why am I different? Why am I this or that? And then you get interested in the brain, understanding how it works. And then the era of technology started ramping up quite a lot. So I went in tech first. So I did my after high school here in Canada and Quebec. We have what we call cégep. So I did a technical degree in computer science, going in a more into computer science. Then I started my engineering degree in electrical engineering, and then I started watching a lot of video on YouTube on BCIs. So invasive BCIs, like the BrainGate projects and things like that. And I was like, wow, this is so exciting. Just the fact that we could interface and have a way to bridge the gap between tech and the brain. So I started being interested more and more, and then I started being passionate about the field, and then it became an obsession. Now it's it's an obsession. Now I'm on a quest to seeing how much we can push the field within my lifetime. I personally want to die with a brain with a chip in my brain, knowing that we enabled that. So in 500, 1,000 years from now, and more than that, when we look back in time, in evolution of technology and the merger of humans and technology, we will pinpoint, and I hope we'll pinpoint of this generation that we made that happen in a responsible manner. So that the technology that we consider things that are like ethics, accessibility, inclusivity, and all these values that are important when we create a field that is so important as neurotechnology. So it became kind of a natural journey to have a greater impact in the field. So in 2015, I started NeuroTechX with other people that are passionate about the field. The idea was not to build a top-down organization where we know what needs to be done to help the field, but rather the opposite. Let's get together people that want to spend their career in the field, that people that are doing their master's, PhD, and that want to spend the next 40, 50 years of their lives working in the field and being that awesome field of neurotechnology, knowing that it's very early, that we need to be patient because we're not going to see the matrix and we're not going to implant chips in our brain, in our backyard in the next 5 years. So I think that people needs to be honest about the field, but people that want to commit and be part of that field and of that journey, we wanted to have kind of a place where people can go from enthusiast to expert, but really open a discussion. And then with a bottom-up approach, put together some initiatives that will help people build a field. So we came up with different initiatives, such as like the student club is a good example, where undergrads started reaching out and they were like, we're excited about the field, but what can we do? So this is a good example where we started the student club so that at a university level, people can get together, work on Neurotech project. We start a annual competition so that they can kind of have a target and objective to work toward. And then we start other initiatives. And more recently, we've started NeuroTechX services, trying to help people get jobs and also be consulting mandates so that people that have skills, and on the other side, the demand for skills and talent, we're trying to facilitate that matchmaking, that connection.
Yeah, I personally think your initiative to start NeuroTechX and to essentially expand the field and educate more people about it is truly inspirational to many people. And for those people who are listening, I think it would be a very good opportunity to just go check out NeuroTechX, the website, and what you guys are working on. So, in addition, you mentioned that you wanted to die with a chip in your brain. So, just from what I recall, the response to such invasive BCI technologies is for the most part not perceivable amongst the general public. So, I think looking back at the recent product launch of Neuralink, many people felt that such technology was too invasive of their body. So I'm just curious to know, what's your opinion on the whole idea of invasive BCI technologies, and what do you think are some benefits of it in the future?
Yeah, that question is actually very interesting. And when I talk about my personal journey, as I just said, like I want to die with a chip in my brain. I kind of use the example of Elon Musk who wants to die on Mars, which is a little bit of a figure of speech. Well, I want to do it literally, but it's more the symbol that it represents than the actual thing itself. I think that as a society, it's important we start discussing these things because it's happening. It's not there yet, and it's not going to be there in 2 years, 3 years from now, where people implant brain chips for cognitive enhancement. But we're talking about it. We're researching towards it, and we're putting a lot of money in that direction. So is it inevitable that will happen? I don't know. But are we striving for trying to go there? Yes. So we need to discuss as society where we stand and how fast and how slow and how to regulate these things and talk about, as I said earlier, ethics, accessibility, inclusivity, because we're shaping that future and people are doing that. So I think that, and it will have obviously a societal impact. So we need to be more or less, not necessarily all on the same page, because I don't think we will. And I think we're facing discussions similar to religion and things like that, where at the end of the day, there will be some people that will agree with that, some people that will disagree. And from my point of view, I find it really exciting to see how it's going to unfold. Because I think that for the first time in human history, can we reverse engineer ourselves, or that a species actually can do it. Never before could we go faster or different than just natural evolution, and just playing by these rules with evolution, reproduction, and genes and things like that. But only recently we do have the tools to change ourselves, to reverse engineer ourselves and augment ourselves. So I think that this has opened a new discussion that was never really there before. So with that in mind, I don't want to say yes, we should have chips in our brain. I don't want to say no. I want to use the NeuroTechX platform to have this discussion, because it concerns everybody, whether you are in the field or not in the field. So I wanted when we started NeuroTechX, I wanted to create a vehicle, and apparently resonated with a lot of people, to create kind of like this vehicle and this platform for discussions about these things, because this is not just a researcher discussion. Now, with that in mind, it's not a one-time discussion. It's a culture. It's evolving with that. It's evolving with all the new technology. It's evolving with all the new biotech, nanotech, neurotech, and all the other tech. It's not one and the same discussion, but it's in the same umbrella of how do we want to evolve with tech, because before it wasn't really there, and now we've created tools with our cell phone and things like that. Obviously, we're going to push things too far. We always do. We'll always will. And this is where we realize, okay, this is too far. Let's come back. And for example, right now with the phone and things like that, we're like, oh, we're spending way too much time in the digital world and not enough in real life with all of the Facebook, the cell phone messaging, things like that. But we need to find new models. We need to evolve with this new reality. So for me, the chip in the brain, it's not going to happen in the next 5 years. It's not going to happen in the next seven years for brain enhancement. Definitely for people that are disabled, yes. But I think that everybody would agree that if the benefits outweigh the risk and the downside, then it's a good thing for people that are disabled. So I think that this discussion is going to be it's going to be fairly easy. I think that the tough one is for enhancement. So with that in mind, I'm just excited about enabling this discussion and talking about it. And what I also want to do, and we're going to start the NeuroTech show, is to document this journey as well. So because I'm very excited to also see how this whole thing unfolds, to a few years back to in the future when the technology is way more mature and we have a better view actually of what's possible and what's not. Because at this point, it's really like cognitive enhancement with brain chip. We're far from that. We have like snippets of ideas that things can work, in a couple of studies, but definitely not at scale in a real life and things like that. So we're definitely far, but I find it exciting, just the activity of talking about it because it's coming. So I think I'm more interested in the journey than the actual end result.
Yes, most definitely. I personally agree that the shift of using these chips to treat diseases would be much more quicker and efficient than developing these chips for personal enhancements at this point in society. Um, Also, I want to bring up an idea that's basically capturing the attention of many people across the world right now. And this is essentially the whole idea of mindfulness, being mindful, and essentially what consciousness is. You mentioned earlier that what got you into neurotechnology in the first place was this feeling that you were different than everyone around you. And that essentially motivated you to figure out what that factor is, what that difference is. For me personally, I think that this ability to distinguish yourself and, like you said, to basically point out this difference is what consciousness is. And this idea of consciousness fascinates many people, and at the same time, other people tend to disagree with it. In addition, from a physiological standpoint, there are some people who speculate that the pineal gland is responsible for this conscious behavior, and once again, there are other people who are completely against this whole idea. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on this particular topic, and if you spend any time researching or studying about it.
I'm definitely not an expert on consciousness. I want to put that
Yeah.
out there. Um, and many people are, but at the end of the day, I think that no one really is at the same time, because I don't think that we necessarily have once again, the resolution, the tools, to really understand what it is. So at this point, the way I personally see it, and once again, these are the kind of subjects where it's controversial by nature because everybody is right and everybody is wrong at the same time. I don't think that there is a right or wrong answer at this point. My point of view is the same on religion. I think that they're all right and wrong at the same time, because we don't know the ground truth. So anybody's guess is a good guess to some extent. So when it comes to consciousness, we've always been fascinated about it. Recently, maybe we've opened new doors once again because we have technology and new tools and new fancy brain scanners and things like that. I'm not sure if it has evolved a lot or just opened more doors.
Okay.
A new avenue of looking at consciousness with different tools and trying to bring some theory of the mind a bit further along their journey now that we have new tools to explain more things. But it's still a very open-ended debate where there's no right answer or wrong answer or ground truth in that space. I think that to some extent, as scientists and people that are venturing in the brain and technology and neurotech in these fields, I think that you have to remain open to all the possibilities, but you also have to also put one hypothesis of I believe this at the moment, and I'm going to try to explore in that direction. But you need to be open that your direction might be wrong, and then you need to rethink, and maybe you'll see it differently in a couple of years from now. So I personally believe that the consciousness lives within the brain itself. That the brain is a finite, very complex, but yet finite circuitry to some extent, but a very, very complex one. But that there's no something outside of it. But once again, I'm open to being wrong as well with many other things, many other theories. So yeah, I find it fascinating. I don't talk too much about the consciousness thing because there are other people that are way more interesting to listen to on that on that subject. So I'd rather kind of like encourage people to look at other sources than myself, but definitely looking at different point of view. And also, I think that consciousness at this point, with the tools we have, with the resolution we have, with the understanding of the brain that we have, I think that it's a self journey. So you need to kind of like explore it the way you want to explore it and put it the sense you want to put it. And once again, it's kind of like putting an hypothesis that I think that consciousness is this, and then go in that direction to study it more, but being open of pivoting towards something like a different point of view later on as well.
Got it. That makes sense. So yeah, considering the emergence of many fascinating technologies today, like I mentioned before, such as artificial intelligence and deep learning, One problem in neurotechnology that you mentioned in your article is the availability of EEG datasets for research and learning purposes. In addition, you also mentioned that it's pretty expensive for someone to generate such data, which basically goes back to your point in saying that there's less datasets available. So, within the past 3 years since you wrote this article, do you think that there's been a change in the availability of datasets, or do you still think that this remains as one of the obstacles that we are facing?
Yeah, I think that there are two things here. The data and the information in the data. So let's start with the availability of the data in big data sets. So with deep learning to be efficient and to work, we know and we've seen in other fields, whether it's video, voice, and images, that you need a lot of data for a deep neural net to really understand the complexity within the data that you're looking at to make decision, whether it's classification or other problems. And right now, most of the studies and most of the data sets are fairly limited. So you cannot train deep neural nets on these data sets that we have. However, we start to see, and this is what I mentioned in my review paper that I wrote last year with EEG and deep learning review paper, that we're start to seeing more and more big data sets and clinical, clinics and hospitals and universities and research centers that are opening and making these data sets public. And I think that this is really key for enabling the field of deep learning and EEG, because if people continue recording, if we look at the BCI, for example, most of the EEG BCI work is done on like 15 subjects in a lab. So you kind of like, you'll, as a researcher, you'll have 15, let's say up to 30 people in your lab coming for 1, 2, 3 sessions. You'll do your experiment, and then you have kind of like these 20 something, 30 subjects with 3 sessions doing 1 hour of BCI things. Training deep learning on that, and this is what I wanted to look at when we did the review paper, is how much data is enough data. And still, after reviewing 150 paper, I still cannot answer that question, unfortunately. So we reviewed 150 paper, trying to understand how much data is required and what kind of models work best. So should we go like CNN way, RNN, autoencoder? What kind of model works well for EEG signals? So we highlighted the trends in the review paper, but what I was really excited about by writing the paper is really seeing that a lot of the work was starting to be done on big data sets, namely in sleep and epilepsy, because they do have clinic centers, and they've been recording EEG for years. Some of them have been through the ethics nightmare and admin nightmare of going through and kind of like being able to release that publicly. And hats off to these groups. Recently, actually, with the TUH Temple University dataset, NeuroTechX collaborated with Novella Neurotech to make a competition on epilepsy. So this is one step that we need more of these steps of like, whether they are competitions, big data sets. We just need more energy in the system to accelerate deep learning for EEG. But for that to be possible and people to develop skills, models, what it means to handle that kind of data, because EEG researchers are not necessarily used to doing deep learning and not necessarily used to handling that amount of data either. So I think that we need more of these initiatives releasing big data sets. I think that we're starting to see that, and we'll see that more and more. So yeah, I think that we're at the very, very beginning of a field. So this is the data part. Now, the information within the data. So have we plateaued of understanding what's in the EEG data? So if all the information that is in the EEG data is currently understood with normal machine learning, traditional machine learning, and the features that we've extracted over the years. So I'm thinking about extracting alpha band, beta band, theta, doing ratios and things like that, knowing where the activity will be, for example, with motor imagery, with BCIs. So if all the information contained in the EEG signals, we actually already know that, well, deep learning will not necessarily get better than what we already have. So even with crazy data sets, we might be able to automate things, which is cool because we won't have to do signal processing, artifact removals and things like that, and we'll just send raw data. And the deep neural net will do what the PhD students right now are doing with removing and getting the nice features, and then putting that towards a machine learning algorithm. So maybe that part will be automated with deep learning. But the question is, will the end result improve? So the question really is in the data, because we know that EEG, the SNR of EEG is not necessarily the best. I believe that looking at the brain with an electrical angle, such as EEG, trying to look at the electrical activity, is a very good one, because the brain, we know that there is an exchange of electrical activity. So yes, it's the good one, but the tool that we're using called EEG right now, in the resolution that we have right now with the contact and everything, the signal is definitely not perfect. It's low SNR. So the question is there a lot more information that we don't know? If so, it's going to be very interesting for deep learning. But if not, then it's going to be probably the same, and we'll maybe get a bit more, but we won't be making kind of like a giant leap. But at the end of the day, we need to try, because nobody can answer that question. So we need to try. So we need more data, better algorithm, and I think we're going to spend a few years, the few next years, of just trying deep learning, and what can deep learning do for EEG and all the other brain fields, whether it's with MRI or other modalities. I think that we need to try, and we need to push until a point where we don't see any more advancement. But I think that for now, for the next couple of years, there will be a lot of effort in that direction, as it should.
Yeah, exactly. Just like you mentioned, there's a lot of work to be done. And in addition, you mentioned that there's a lot of unanswered questions. So I just wanted to ask, what are the biggest unanswered questions in neurotechnology? And what is the role of BCI communities, particularly communities that work with non-invasive BCI technologies? What's their role in answering these unanswered questions?
Once again, very good question. Your questions are pretty good. Quite vague and quite hard to answer, but very good nonetheless. So in terms of problems in neurotech, I mean, as I said, we're only starting to lay down the foundation. So we have unanswered question 360 in every aspect, from hardware, software, to more the bio aspect, and kind of like the connection really with the digital, the bio and the tech, let's say. So at any level, there are many interesting challenges. In the neurotech, if I take just my quick angle on that, I think that right now there's a lot of effort in the invasive world. So that's very interesting. Invasive and non-invasive will continue to evolve, and maybe we'll learn more and more, and they will interlace and exchange knowledge more and more. But we need both. So but these are really different challenges, obviously, when you go inside the brain and when you go outside the brain. So inside the brain, and invasive, form factor, power, material, there are so many challenges to unlock that, because right now we're kind of like more, right now we have like UTR arrays and things like that, where we put a very specific, we're doing a lot of damages, we're putting it, and this is all, but we know that the brain, very few things happen only at one place. So it's good for sensory motor things that we know, but most of the things happen in a distributed fashion. So we all know that with having one chip at one place, we'll be able to do only very limited subset of cognitive tasks, if you will. But a lot of challenge on that, and I find it really exciting, because if we were 10 years ago, it was very, very super niche. But now it's gaining a lot of traction. So I think it's very exciting for someone who wants to be in that lane. On the non-invasive, so there is EEG and the other modalities. I think that right now, light and sound are getting a lot more traction and attention from research, trying to send light and then looking at what comes out on the other side, but just it goes in and then it goes out, and just trying to understand what happened in the light in the brain, and then for brain activity from that. Sound is doing kind of like the same thing, kind of like a little like a sonar or something. You send sound, it goes back, you infer what happens in the middle, and combining both and trying to shake one with the other. So trying to modulate light and sound, vice versa. I think that's really exciting to in that field as well. So Facebook is exploring that. Light,
Mhm.
Marilu Jepsen, a lot of the new initiatives are trying to explore that. So I think that what is exciting in the unanswered question is really these new modalities of exploring the brain. So as I said earlier, we have electrical way. So we need new innovation in EEG in electrical fashion, but in the
Mhm.
same time, a lot of the energy is being spent on light and sound, which I think is exciting. And I think that the ultimate device
Mhm.
will have all of them. So you'll have kind of like some electrical sensors, light, sound, and with a mixed model by mixing all these different things that gives you different, whether it's deeper activity, whether it's slower activity, whether it's more local, whether it's faster activity. So you have different properties of these different modalities, and I think that by combining them, it's going to be exciting to see how much more precise and how much more information we can get by combining these.
Got it. Most definitely. I think this question you just answered from talking about the problem of neurotechnology and how we can deal with it from an invasive and non invasive standpoint leads on to my next question, which is what do you think the next generation of neurotech devices will look like? Both, once again, from an invasive standpoint and a non invasive standpoint.
That's a very good question. At the end of the day, I think that the form factor of the device itself
Mhm.
depends a lot on the added value in your life. Meaning that right now, for example, if we think about EEG devices, if like nobody is going to wear a big headset on your head to go outside in public in the transit and then at school and things like that,
Mhm.
because the value is just not there. If
Mhm.
it was changing your life completely and it would make you, let's say, let's go crazy, 3 times as smart as you are, or faster
Mhm.
and way more memory and things like that, everybody would be wearing a weird headset.
Mhm.
But it's a trade-off between added value and look and acceptance of the society. So right now we're not used to seeing neurotech on people's head.
Mhm.
So definitely anything that looks weird right now, if the added value is not there, nothing will be kind of like at scale. However, more in the coming years, I think we'll see more and more like headphones and things like that.
Mhm.
Cap like in VR, you have the perfect form factor, you have the perfect excuse to put sensor because you already have something on your head with straps that needs to be tied. So it's easy to then put sensors there. So yeah, we'll have to put the tech in a way in the next few years. Then at some point we'll know more about neurotech and its value, its impact, and we'll probably change or shift a little bit our acceptance for what kind of device is accepted in society. And then we'll have new wave of devices based on that. I'm thinking about Google Glass, for example.
Mhm.
So I personally think that we'll all have glasses that will record and we'll have some tech and we'll have real-time feed and information directly to our eyes. And we'll, at the end of the day, we all want kind of like our cell phone to be directly like tied right here
Mhm.
because then we save time and we don't have to have an actual phone. It's just there. So I think that it just makes sense and that we'll go there. And at some point, maybe like in the contact lens as well, directly there. So you don't even have that. But these waves of innovation first they disrupt and then people they are not at ease with that and they
Mhm.
raise questions like the fact that people could be recording 24/7. So once again going back to my one of my earlier points on discussing of where we're going with tech and humans, Google Glass was a really good example of that where I think we'll reopen the public discussion and then we'll be a bit more okay with that, but we
Mhm.
need to define the framework as a society what it means to have Google Glass record all the time, have tech right here, right there, that overlay the real world, and we have our tech there. So I think that with NeuroTech is going to be the same thing, where first things that will be proposed will be rejected to some extent because it's weird, and people say no at first, and then we show the value. And as long as it brings value, we'll be able to accept things. So that's from a societal form factor.
Mhm.
As for what the next neurotech things will look like, I think that, as I said, the combined modalities is going to be an interesting component to take into consideration when we do these devices. So Facebook showed their kind of like prototype kind of thing where they went from a FNIRS device where you have a cap with a lot of wires with lasers and light going in, and now you have kind of like a more headband kind of thing with something on the forehead here. So will people start wearing these kind of devices? I don't know. They will definitely be embedded in other things. So when we think about VR, I think that's a given. And then it goes back to the value. As for the invasive stuff, a lot of people have come up with crazy ideas that needs to be explored. Think about like the neural dust, neural lace, all these things. So are you trying to put a mesh around the brain? Are you trying to just put a bunch of like tiny sensors? So the idea of neural dust of being like dust, if you want to open the skull, low kind of like small, tiny particles that goes everywhere. I think that we need a distributed system for invasive technology. The question is how we're going to do that. So Elon Musk working on this sewer machine where they will kind of like do tiny holes to put tiny threads in the brain. So yeah, I think that for invasive technology, it needs to be distributed because it's going to be at only one place if we want to have a more robust model of what's happening. So I think that's going to be key, and finding a way for power and energy, mainly heat, because we can have power, but there's just too much heat with that power and that transmission, things like that. So there's, going back to your unanswered question, I think that handling that aspect of things, how do you do power with like lots of energy but low heat kind of thing? It's an interesting engineering problem trying to solve, because we cannot cook the brain. So yes, we can make it super tiny, but tiny with a lot of energy means that it's if it's not kind of like distributed and kind of like that amount of surface for the heat, and it's kind of like a tiny point with a lot of energy, then it means that it's kind of like it's burning right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question about the how it will look like, but these are just more points on question to work to, because nobody really knows what it's going to look like, and that's what makes it exciting, is that we're so early in the process that all the ideas could be good ideas. So from the neural dust, neural lace, trying to put a mesh around the brain, these are good ideas, a bit crazy, but good ideas nonetheless.
Exactly. I feel that this uncertainty of how they will look like is our best guess so far, just like you said. However, I believe that even if we have the technology to come up with an optimal engineering approach to develop such device, the biggest obstacle we'll be facing regardless is the public policy and whether the government would allow us to conduct research, whether it's on animal subjects or human subjects. So I think moving forward, changing the minds of policymakers and the general public would perhaps be the biggest obstacle we're facing, and would be the most important thing that we'd have to do. So yeah, that's just my take on that.
I couldn't agree more. And this is also one of the reasons why we wanted to start this platform of NeuroTechX and trying to bring more voice, because at the end of the day, policymakers is also kind of listening to what the population and people are saying, and most of the policies are also from taxpayers. So at the end of the day, people have a voice, have a saying in that, and it's all together. We'll kind of like decide what we do, what we don't do. And this discussion is just getting started. At some point, we'll definitely have to, maybe some countries will be more open, and then we'll see that as a threat because they might go faster. And when we're talking about the brain and going faster about the brain, it can mean leading to, and I'm extrapolating here, but still, it's important to consider that they might be able to enhance themselves faster, and then it will create kind of like a gap. So these are things to consider. It's not things that we need to overreact and rush, because definitely we're not going to see another country enhance themselves and being smarter than everybody else and taking over the world. So we're definitely not there. But these are things that we need to consider in decision making and policy. So we've seen that, for example, in the biohacking community, where BioViva, I think, the company. So they're the CEO of the company working on on a anti-aging therapy could not inject herself with that therapy in the US. So she needed to travel and go in another country where it was okay to do it. So we've already started outsourcing or outshoring and putting kind of like going to places to do fringe things with countries that are more okay with that kind of experiments. So obviously, right now it's a very, very tiny infraction of these experiments, but would that ramp up, it would definitely challenge some of the countries' policy of like, do we bend the rule a bit more? But at the end of the day, we do also need to protect the public. So when we talk about opening skulls to do experiments, because obviously invasive technology, we could do way more progress if we could just open people's skulls
Yeah.
and just kind of like start playing and doing experiments. At the end of the day, it's a societal decision that we said no.
Yeah.
So are we going to re-challenge and change our decision and the rules? I don't know. Will money play an impact in that? Now that we have like the Elon Musk of this world pushing for human enhancement and things like that, that's why I'm really fascinated of being part of that journey that we're living right now. I find it really exciting, but definitely policies and things like that will have to rethink and just monitor how fast we go, and also others. So, like if there is, as I said, if other countries are bending the rule a bit more, what does that mean for other countries that are not doing it? Does that mean that there will be some sort of a brain drain where the very smart people, very excited to work on fringe thing, will be kind of like attracted by other countries that are saying, yes, here we're okay with XYZ. So we'll see as the field progress. Right now, it's not necessarily a big thing, but in the biohacking, for example, anti-aging and that kind of gene therapy, we've started seeing that. So I think that it's one when you look at it and then exponential curve, this is kind of like first few points that can really accelerate in the future.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Similarly to how you mentioned, we now have the rapid rise of biotechnology as well, considering the latest advancements such as CRISPR and how there are biohackers who conduct their own experiments and use the power of genome editing to inject themselves with what they've developed. And I think this idea of self-enhancement goes into parallel with neurotechnology as well. So yeah, thank you so much once again for making this interview possible. I think you spoke widely on how neurotechnology is developing, its previous history, and most importantly, how modern technologies such as artificial intelligence, deep learning, and machine learning are helping to advance it. In addition, you also went over some very big problems in neurotechnology as well, and like I said, gave insights to the future. So now, for those who are listening, could you go over any new opportunities at NeuroTechX, just like you mentioned with internships, full-time jobs at other neurotech companies, as well as the recent epilepsy hackathon?
Yep. Just before the kind of the plug or promotion side of things, I'd be curious to have your reversed interview for just one or two questions of what got you excited in the field of neurotechnology yourself.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I never heard about the term of neurotechnology until my freshman year of college. So currently I'm a sophomore. So and that's actually kind of funny because even till now, just like you mentioned in your article, the term neurotechnology is still not defined in the dictionary, which I find completely ridiculous. So yeah, I first heard about neurotechnology from my friend who's a member of NeuroTech at UC Berkeley. So I got very intrigued by what neurotechnology is since I never heard about it. So I asked him what they did. I read a couple of articles that they wrote, and that immediately got me interested. In addition to that, similarly to how you speculated your differences amongst your peers, how you're different from other people, that's how my thought processes work too. So because of that, that also got me interested into the whole idea of consciousness. And once I got into the idea of consciousness, I further developed interest into neurotechnology because my goal, my aspirations are to eventually do work related to consciousness and figure out like what it potentially is.
Awesome. And what kind of what and the reason why I'm kind of like reversing is obviously NeuroTechX, as I said earlier, it's a bottom-up organization. So We like to understand and know a bit more of the community and people that want to be in the field, and the motivation, what gets people excited about the field, and also kind of like good and bad conception or misunderstanding of the field and things like that, just to be able to correct and address the discord, the message that we're putting out there. So in terms of career, what would you see? So first, what's your degree right now in, and where do you see yourself in 5-10 years from now working? What kind of work would you like to be doing in the field?
Yeah, so I'm studying math and computer science at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So I think for the next few years, I want to do more internships and work related to machine learning and artificial intelligence. But ultimately, like I stated before, I want to work in the neurotech industry, and my ultimate uh, dream and goal is to uncover what consciousness is, or put an effort to discover if there's any possible signs of it. So I think that society right now, you have quantum computing in order to simulate our real world, and I think society as a whole, like technologically wise, the ultimate goal is to replicate the human brain, just like you mentioned earlier today. Just reverse engineering the human brain. So that's what my vision is of a technologically advanced world, and I think for me, career wise, just contributing to this would be like a very good opportunity for me, and something I'd definitely be interested in.
Got it. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, the plug. So to answer your last question, what's next? So first, right now, obviously, the whole NeuroTechX community locally is being disrupted with COVID-19, obviously. So we're doing a lot of things online. So if people are interested, I don't know when this information would be shared, but right now we're doing every Thursday. There is a hack night with NeuroTech SF. So at 7 p.m. Pacific time, a bunch of people are getting together on Zoom to discuss about different things. There is a bit of a speaking, but it's also kind of like more technical by nature. So that's one thing where people can go. We do have the Neureka challenge working on deep learning, well, machine learning and deep learning, but it's a big data set. So the hope is to have more people going to the deep learning and data mining of this kind of big data set. So it's for seizure detection and trying to optimize also number of channels being used, number of electrodes being used to do the classification of seizure and the start and stop time of these seizures. So that's one thing. The job board, I'm very, very excited. If people are looking for either internships or jobs, whether in academia or industry, we do have a job board on neurotechx.com/jobs. And we're publishing a lot of awesome opportunities. So I wish I had that when I was an undergrad to find other internships or potential jobs after. So we do have a lot of exciting companies, a lot of labs. So definitely go check it out. And another thing as well that we're going to be starting, we'll see how that goes, but we're starting the NeuroTech show. So trying to cover in a video format. So not just kind of writing about it, but talking. So a few people that are really qualified in different aspects of neurotechnology, whether it's brain imaging, whether it's brain simulation, cognitive training, different things, trying to cover the actuality, what's happening in the news, what are the cool tech, whether it's gadget, whether it's science, and just kind of like reviewing for neurotech enthusiasts to be more aware of what's happening and also just inspire and document that journey. So as I said earlier, I think one of my personal, not dream, but mission, I would say, it's to document, because I know that the journey is exciting. We all wish that the matrix and kind of like that the brain and the tech is merged perfectly and we understand everything about the brain and we can control it with tech, but we're definitely not there. But if we're not pushing in that direction, we're never going to get there. So we need people that believe that this is close enough that it's worth spending their career and trying to improve different components. So we need people in all the fields. So that's also kind of with NeuroTechX what we're trying to do, to inspire people, but also be realistic with the expectations. So because it's very exciting, but we need to be honest about where the field actually is right now. So people comes in for the matrix and then they say, oh, okay, we're not there yet. So how can they contribute in the field, or move on if it's not necessarily for them. So, for example, AI, we have a lot of people. If you want to make a lot of money, obviously, in other fields such as self-driving cars and things like that, there is way more opportunities right now in these fields with AI. So it's okay if we're just kind of a transition, but we want to at least give this platform of, oh, I'm going to explore neurotech a little bit. Oh, this is very exciting. I want to spend my career and help push this field forward. Or, okay, that's exciting, but we're not where I thought we were. So I'm just going to move on and go seek other opportunities, which is fine as well. But at least trying to give that information and bring as much energy as we can in the field.
Yeah, definitely. I think sharing as much information, bringing as much energy possible is a great way, because then we'll essentially be showing people the potential of neurotechnology. And once we do that, we'll be showing them that they too can take a part in contributing to the advancement of neurotechnology, which at the end will advance neurotechnology and will also influence policymakers and show them that there is a potential for neurotechnology to change mankind for the better. And at the end of the day, I think it starts with the initial like conveying of information, just showing people that there is potential. So I think this all lays out in a sort of domino effect that leads from one cause to another cause that eventually, just like we discussed earlier, changes the whole policy behind this, which is, just like we discussed, our biggest obstacle.
Awesome. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so thank you so much for doing this interview once again. I'm sure a lot of people listening got a lot of insights in your technology, what it is right now, and what it will be in the future. So thank you once again.
Awesome. No worries. Thanks for reaching out.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks.